Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Ryan Garcia versus Rolando Romero fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into this. So this is of course a historic event in Times Square, and it's one of the first events, at least in recent years, definitely in a long time, which is, an outdoor event, which I believe is free and open to the public in the middle of just a huge venue in Times Square, which is going to be so crazy to see how they do it because, I respect the Ring Magazine massively for what they're doing. They're trying to bring entertainment as much as they can with every event in which they put on. Of course, they've just put on their first major event, or their first kind of proper event, in Eubank versus Ben, which of course was a huge success and was a massive fight and a great fight that really lived up to the hype. But with this one, they're doing something a bit different. Yes, the fights aren't exactly maybe what we want as fans, and realistically, it's not what we want as fans. We want to see Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney, the rematch, but of course we've got to, I suppose, settle for these fights first, which maybe don't really make the most amount of sense, but nonetheless, it's happening, and like I say, we have to kind of deal with it. And it's just become more entertaining though because they are doing it in Times Square, and so it's very smart branding, it's very smart advertisement, and something which I found interesting. Obviously, it's Ryan Garcia versus Rolly Romero, obviously Ramirez versus Devin Haney, but like I say, it's surprising to see the way in which they've advertised it, because even the trailer, which I'm really enjoying that they are doing these trailers for these big events, is very, very heavily based around Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney. And if I was Roy Romero and Jose Ramirez, I would be really annoyed by that, especially Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez has been in some very good fights, and has been a great fighter and has had some good wins and some good moments. And, Rolly Romero has had that as well, but just maybe not so quite at the same kind of level in which Jose Ramirez has fought at before and had success at before. But, like I say, if I was one of them, I'd be feeling quite frustrated, quite annoyed by the fact of them, just kind of brushing aside, even in like this trailer, they're just brushing aside both of them and just speaking about Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney. Of course, both of them are favourites, and they're going to have to come on here and put a performance out. But it will be interesting to see which version of both Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney we get, because they are both coming off the first fight between the two of them, but they both are coming off a dramatic kind of incidents for both of them as a result of that first fight. And I'll do my prediction for Ryan Garcia versus Ronnie Romero first. And for this fight, it's for the WBA regular world welterweight title, which is an interesting one because the WBA has, seemingly kind of slowed down with the use of bringing in regular titles and super titles and things like that, and seemingly have been trying to stop, using that and having multiple world champions for a belt, because there's just realistically no need. I think they were just wanting to put on a world title on this card because otherwise, there is of course a Teofimo Lopez fight, but I think they just wanted to give, maybe an incentive toward Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia. I'm not entirely sure why they put it on, but nonetheless, it's a welterweight fight, and it's Ryan Garcia now officially kind of fighting at the welterweight division. And of course, the whole thing of the first fight between him and Haney was, a lot of it was down to the weight and the fact that Ryan missed weight, couldn't fight for the super lightweight title, and then of course, amongst various other things which happened with that fight. It will be interesting, like I say, to see what happens if he does win the title, because technically, if he is regular WBA world champion Ryan Garcia, he's meant to then go on and be ordered to fight Jaron Ennis, which would be an excellent fight and would be a fight in which I would love to see. But they aren't going to do that. They're going to do Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia for around September, October time, seemingly. So, like I say, it will be interesting to see how they kind of work around it, and maybe they're just setting up for a world title to be on the line for Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia. Maybe that's what they're trying to do, and that was the best way to kind of do it. But yeah, like I say, it's just interesting to see that it did get ordered for a world title. Like I say, Ryan Garcia in that fight versus Devin Haney, there was a lot that was happening, and Ryan Garcia didn't look like a fighter who was, maybe in the best of headspaces to say the least, and he really did look quite out of it. He had a lot to say. He seemed very talkative. He seemed very explosive. He seemingly was having a lot that he was dealing with. Things about the fact he was just drinking on, weighing day when he was weighing in. He was just drinking whilst doing so. And, there was a lot of things. And of course, all that he tested positive for, which, at least he served his ban, not talking about any other names of fighters who haven't served their bans, but at least Ryan Garcia did, even though it's not a very long ban for realistically what he did, kind of test positive for. He probably should have been banned for a bit longer, but like I say, at least he served his ban. He's now, deservingly got himself back, I suppose, to an extent, being allowed to fight, and it seemingly now seems like he is in a bit of a different headspace. I don't necessarily know if he's, clean of any sort of drug, that being any kind of drug, and I don't necessarily know if he's not been drinking. I would like to hope he's not. I think he isn't. He seemingly is. I don't know where his head's at, but he seems a lot more relaxed for this fight, and that's something at least. He seemingly is coming in not just saying everything and trying to do everything and just being this crazy character. He's seemingly a bit calmer, and he's still got his little things to say. And the round table that they did between all the fighters on this card was very funny, and same as the face-off between him and Rolly Romero was very funny as well. He's been keeping his cool and not doing anything, like I say, too crazy. Maybe this was mind games in the first fight for him to get under Devin Haney's skin. We'll have to wait and see if they do rematch, what Ryan Garcia will be acting like then. But like we see sometimes with Teofimo Lopez, the mindset changes. We don't necessarily always know what kind of version we're going to get of Ryan Garcia, and it seems like we're getting a bit more of a relaxed version. Will that be a good version? I'm not entirely sure because, of course, he could very easily be overlooking Rolly Romero here. And Romero does have his good, level of power, and he can have success from the power that he does carry. And he's definitely going to be a threat for Ryan Garcia. I mean, when Romero plants his feet, he can time you with a good uppercut coming in, and Ryan Garcia was smothering his work a bit when he was coming in. Yes, he was kind of just going for that continuous left hand, but yes, it was kind of working the entire fight versus Devin Haney, so realistically, he was having a lot of success with that. He was getting outboxed in certain rounds, and when he was on the back foot and he wasn't able to time the left hand, he wasn't really having loads of success. He was kind of just curling up into a little bit of a ball at times, which was a bit of an interesting sight to see with his Philly shell, and just not really doing too much and letting Devin Haney pretty much just slap him to the body, which again is an interesting thing to have seen from him, and will be interesting to see what kind of a defensive version we get if Rolly Romero comes with his attacking, aggressive, powerful skills. And like I say, we'll have to wait and see. But I do have Ryan Garcia winning via KO in round 9 for this fight. I think he's going to be able to have a lot of success with Rolly Romero, to be completely honest. I think Rolly Romero could possibly hurt him early on in the fight. Like I say, if Ryan Garcia just tries to rush him in with a left hand, he could definitely get caught Garcia with one of Ramirez's uppercuts. But for the most part, I think Ryan Garcia is going to be able to wear him down. I think Rolly Romero, when he plants his feet, if he gets pushed away physically, he isn't really too much after that. He'll plant his feet, and then if you can kind of walk through like a shot of his and land one of your own shots, he'll be very much off balance and be scrambling, and that's when he can get hurt, and that's when he's shown he can be hurt, and that's where he got hurt versus Pitbull Cruz. And I'm sure that probably could happen again. Obviously, he went and beat Manuel Jaimez in his last fight via unanimous decision. It wasn't an excellent victory. I mean, Jaimez went on to fight Abdullah Mason next, and he got stopped in round 4. And so, like I say, it wasn't an excellent victory for Romero. And I think if Romero does lose to Garcia, I would love to see a Romero versus Mason fight. I think that could be a great stepping stone type of fight for Mason. But yeah, that was a bit of an interesting one to see him fight Ryan Garcia. There's obviously been talks about this fight for quite a while, but I just didn't really suspect it was going to happen with a few other big fights, like I say, kind of being there for Ryan Garcia. But, for a return fight after a year out, you could argue that he needs a return, a return bout, like I kind of said. And also, I think possibly because this might be free for fans to watch because it is in Times Square, perhaps they're trying to make the fight. They don't want to put on the best fights because they want to save some money for when they put on events that will sell tickets. Because I don't know necessarily if it's His Excellency or Ring Magazine that cares about this, but I think maybe the sanctioning bodies might, or the WBA might. They might want Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia to fight in a venue where they're gonna sell a lot of tickets, but they might see the opportunity for a big event in Times Square as a great opportunity to build even more hype for the inevitable ticket selling to possibly even, double as a result of this event. It might be smart. Like I said, there's been plenty of times before where we've seen fighters, you know, have a fight lined up and then the fight before something goes wrong. In most recent times, everybody knows Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. Of course, we never have seen that happen, and maybe it will be the case here. But for the Ryan Garcia fight, like I say, I think he's going to win via KO in round 9, and like I say, inevitably stop him with the explosive power in which he does have. And inevitably, like I say, have more success, enough success to be able to hurt and stop Romero, because I definitely do think that the power is still there for Ryan Garcia moving up in weight, and then of course go on to fight Devin Haney if he does beat Jose Ramirez next. But for the Devin Haney versus Jose Ramirez fight, I do think that Devin Haney is going to be able to win via unanimous decision. I think he's going to be able to box well. He didn't box badly versus Devin Haney, against Ryan Garcia. Like I say, he had success in between the knockdowns where he was boxing, especially in the middle rounds. He was boxing and having a lot of success when he was just going to the body. He was having success with his lead hand as well. Was also able to kind of do a bit of a similar Ryan Garcia type of shot where he was looping it in and turning his lead jab into a hook, which, like I say, he was having success with. I think Jose Ramirez has been a bit of a shadow of himself in recent fights. I think the Arnold Barboza fight, he was just too slow to the punch. I think the Barthélemy fight wasn't an amazing fight either. And, like I say, it's just recent times I think he has struggled with the pace, and he hasn't, ever really had the best of defenses either, and Barthélemy was able to showcase that, and then Barboza Jr. was just able to put on a dominant performance realistically, where he was just able to move around and have any kind of success that he wanted. This probably is the more surprising fight to see out of, this and the Ryan Garcia-Rolly Romero fight, because I just didn't necessarily think that this fight made much sense at all. I think a lot of other contenders perhaps could have been a better option, but maybe they're just seeing this fight as a true, return type of fight and getting him used to the welterweight division. Again, it's interesting to see that this is in the welterweight division because, Ryan Garcia basically forced Devin Haney up into that higher weight division because of the fact of, of course, he didn't make weight in the first fight. So he's basically been rewarded by Devin Haney just basically permanently moving up to the weight division that suits Ryan Garcia more, which is interesting. I don't necessarily know if Devin Haney prefers super lightweight. It wasn't that long since he was at lightweight, or if he prefers welterweight, but it's definitely making the welterweight division more interesting. I mean, in recent times, of course, we've seen some huge names leave the welterweight division, and it's kind of needing some big new names with Jaron Ennis now shining through as well. So, with Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia there, it's definitely going to be more interesting. But yeah, like I say, it's not the best, most entertaining fights, I don't think. I think Jose Ramirez won't be able to cause too much problem. I think Devin Haney could easily just box and win by unanimous decision. I would just like to hope that he's not as defensively poor in this fight. Like I say, he was getting caught with that same shot continuously and getting hurt with that same shot. So it's going to be interesting to see if Jose Ramirez does land any big shots, how he will deal with it. And, I'm kind of hoping that Jose Ramirez does land a big shot just to, like I say, be able to see. But I still think, like I say, Devin Haney can box to a unanimous decision victory. Maybe he could stop him late on. He does, he doesn't seem to carry the most amount of power, but I don't think I think his power is a bit underrated. I think he has got a decent level of power, and I think he could easily stop somebody like a Jose Ramirez realistically, because, like I say, I think Ramirez is on the latter side of his career and has been looking, like I say, a bit poor and a bit weaker in his last few fights. But of course, we'll have to wait and see just how good of a version we see of Devin Haney. And then to speak about another fight on this card, the other big fight, of course, there's Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia. That's the big branding with them two names on it. But of course, we also have Teofimo Lopez versus Arnold Barboza Jr. when we saw that round table between them all, it was definitely Teofimo being the most entertaining, as he always is. And, he's definitely an interesting character. He's not had the biggest or best amounts of fights in his last few fights. He fought Jaime Ortiz, and that wasn't an amazing fight. He fought Josh Taylor before that, and that was a very good performance from Teofimo. Like I say, then he fought Jaime Ortiz, where Ortiz was just basically running the entire time, and Teofimo just couldn't cut off the ring, I'm sure, as well as what he wanted. And then he went on to fight Steve Clagler, which was, a very poor, unnecessary fight to see, where just nobody really cared enough to realistically want to see it, and he won comfortably. Maybe he was getting caught a little bit too much, but for the most part, it was still an easy contest for him to be able to win. And now, nobody kind of knew where he was going to go. A lot of people were thinking maybe he would move up into welterweight as well. Obviously, he's not. Or at least I didn't expect him to take this fight, and I think the only reason he's taking this fight is because there's not really too many other fights in the super lightweight division on the table. Perhaps this could be the easiest fight. It definitely would have been ordered because Barboza Jr. is WBO interim champion, and perhaps he's seeing it as an easier fight, but I definitely don't think it will be an easy contest for Teofimo at all. I think Teofimo is a very good fighter. I think he's explosive. I think he has, good, movement and head movement, and he's confident. He's gonna be throwing with intent. He follows up his combinations nicely. He just doesn't really set up much and doesn't use his jab much. And I think there's a few fundamentals perhaps lacking there a little bit, where he's not entirely been shown upon yet. But maybe that's just because he hasn't been fighting the other world champions in recent times. I'm not entirely sure. But, this is a huge opportunity for Barboza Jr. Barboza Jr., like I say, is coming off a great, realistically, performance away from home when he fought Jack Catterall, where, for him to be able to get that decision in Jack Catterall's home city was a great achievement for him and a huge achievement for him. And before this, he was meant to, well, he'd had a few fights where perhaps it wasn't the best of runs. I mean, he fought Zaria, that was a decent performance for him. Then he fought McComb, and that wasn't the best of fights. A lot of people thought McComb won that fight, and you could argue that maybe he just needed that high level of opposition to be able to really test him, because he went on to fight Jose Ramirez and put on a very good performance, and then he went on to fight Jack Catterall and again put on a very good performance. He was getting caught with shots at times still, and maybe he'll still get caught with shots at times early by the quicker hands of Teofimo Lopez, but I do believe that Barboza Jr. will become WBO World Super Lightweight Champion and win via unanimous decision versus Teofimo Lopez. Yes, that is a bold claim, but, again, another person in which mentally we never know which version we're going to get is with Teofimo Lopez, like I've touched upon. He isn't always, at his best, and like I say, is coming off a few fights where perhaps he wasn't fighting at his best, and now this is another kind of step up, and I don't think he's taking Barboza Jr. with enough respect. I think Barboza Jr. really doesn't like or respect Teofimo Lopez, and I think it's going to go into his favour. I think Barboza Jr. has very nice boxing. I love the reverse 1-2s in which he throws. The straight shots in general are always very clean. He's a very disciplined fighter, and I think he can definitely box to a game plan and push Teofimo Lopez back. Like I say, he might struggle with the hand speed early on, but I don't think he's just going to run the entire fight like somebody like an Ortiz did. I think he's going to bring the fight, willingly probably stand toe-to-toe, and be able to have success. I don't think Teofimo Lopez is going to be able to keep up any kind of defensive head movement throughout the whole of the fight, because I think Barboza Jr. is too disciplined to just throw wasteless combinations out. And, like I say, I think Arnold Barboza Jr. is going to be able to box to a unanimous decision victory and cause an upset. And, realistically, that would be a huge upset. Then who he could go on to fight next, perhaps it could be a Lopez again, like I say, huge upset. Maybe that could happen. Or somebody like a Matias. Matias was rumoured to fight Lopez, another fight that fell through. Perhaps that could happen. Or somebody like a Pitbull Cruz, that could be a good fight as well. I mean, Pitbull's coming off a win versus Fierro where, he didn't look as destructive as what he has done in previous fights, but was still a very good, solid win for himself as well. So, there's definitely great fights there for Barboza Jr. If he is able to get this win, it will catapult him into a great position for his career, and so we will have to wait and see. But in general, this is, the start of a great Cinco de Mayo weekend, and with this, Canelo versus Skull and Inoue versus Cardenas, it's an excellent 3 days of fighting in which, for a boxing fan is just huge, and I'm so excited for it. It's definitely, Riyadh season and his excellency in the Ring magazine as well, just really showcasing just how good boxing can be and just how much of a pull that they have to just be able to make fights like cards like this where they can do it in Times Square. They can have two great fights and then just add on Teofimo Lopez just because why not? It's amazing to see. Like I say, this is the first of 3 great cards. I'm going to be giving predictions for them all. I can't wait for this one, and I hope you did enjoy my prediction. Like the video if you did, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.